Camera's on.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the New York City Retirement System's Common Investment Meeting for Wednesday, January 29th, 2020, our first meeting of 2020. And let's go ahead and convene the boards. Let's start with Fire. Mr. Dunn.
Good morning, Mr. Adler.
Good morning.
For Mayor de Blasio.
Steve Yuan for the Mayor Bill Blasio.
For Controller Scott Stringer.
John Dorsett, designee for Control, Scott Stringer.
And for the UFA, Mr. Gerard Fitzgerald. Mr. Robert Eustace.
Eddie Brown has Robert Eustace proxy.
Mr. Eddie Brown.
Here.
Mr. John Kelly.
Here.
And Mr. Peter DeVita.
John Young with Pete DeVita's proxy.
Okay, for the UFOA, Mr. Jack Kelty.
Here.
Mr. Liam Guilfoyle. Mr. Paul Mannix.
Here.
And for Fire Commissioner Daniel Nigro.
Terrell Brown for Daniel Nigro.
We have a quorum. Thanks, Sean.
And Phil Dukes for Commissioner, Jack Jiha for Finance.
I'm sorry I missed you, Phil. How could I?
Okay. Let's next move to police, and I believe it's Mr. Sens Keste.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Adler,
Good
sir.
morning, Sens.
All right. Police Commissioner?
Stephanie Zipper for Commissioner Shea.
Mayor?
Shumon Ray for Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Commissioner of Finance?
Phil Dukes for Finance Commissioner, Jacques Jiha.
See, we won't miss you, Phil. Don't worry. Controller?
John Dorsett, designee for Control, Scott Stringer.
All right. Captains?
Johnny Ramirez, designee of Chris Monahan.
LBA?
Johnny Ramirez, with Louis Turco's property.
SBA?
Anthony Burley, designee for Edmond Westbrook.
DEA? PBA? Oh. You have the proxy? All right. Mr. Facilitator, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Sens. Okay, let's move next to teachers. Ms. Riley.
John Adler,
I am here.
Thomas Brown. Here. Natalie Green Giles. David Gazansky.
Present.
Russell Buckley.
Here.
Deborah Penny.
Here.
Susanna Vickers.
John Dorsett for Control, Scott Stringer.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Patricia. And last, Ms. Winery for NYSERS. Not last, sorry. Next.
Chair, Mayor's Office.
John Adler, present.
Controller's Office.
David Jetter for Controller Scott Stringer.
Public Advocate's Office.
Elizabeth Guzman for Public Advocate, Shimani Williams.
Borough President, Manhattan. Borough President, Brooklyn.
Tanya Campbell for Borough President, Eric Adams.
Borough President, Bronx.
Martha Camille Savier for Bronx Borough President, Rick Vance Jr.
Borough President, Queens.
Alan Swisher for acting Queensborough President Sharon Lee.
Borough President, Staten Island.
Isaac Gordetsky for Borough President James Otto.
International Brotherhood of Teamsters.
Lawrence Bosley and Ruben Torres for President Greg Freud.
Transport Workers Union.
Dave Katzman for TW Local 100 President Tony O'Donnell.
District Council 37.
Raymond Santander for Executive Director Henry Lee.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And then now, last but not least,
Might as
Mr.
well
Rich
be
for
least, it's
Burrs.
okay. Morning, John. We're represented by two trustees today, Natalie Green Giles and Russell Buckley. And we do not have a quorum, and we will be administering this business tonight at our regularly scheduled monthly board meeting, and everyone is invited at Murray Bergstrom.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. So now we are convened at all the boards in public session, and I will call on Mr. Donier.
Good morning. We will begin with an update on strategic initiatives from Kara Schnapper.
Good morning, everybody.
This is my third or fourth opportunity to talk to you about some of the items that we're going to address today on strategic initiatives. And you may recall, for those of you who were here 4 years ago, that we started off because of this book. Okay, I'm not going to ask anybody who's read all 400 pages of it, but as you recall, it was a 400-page Funston report that was talking about reform within the Bureau of Asset Management. And coming out of that was how I joined the group and started working on the issues that were raised within the Funston report. I have to say that it was a wonderful snapshot of what was going on within the organization at the time, and it was a really good opportunity for us to use this as a kicking off point for us to deal with some of the issues that we're facing and challenges facing the Bureau of Asset Management. It is 400 pages. I'm not going to ask anybody to go through 400 pages. I do. You can see from my book, it's pretty well dog-eared. I've got it noted all over the place. But I will turn your attention to one page on it, which I'm going to sort of focus in on. And that was page 14, just to give you an idea. And that gave you a summary of a lot of the items that were included within the Funston report. The roadmap was fantastic because it really did help us think through what was going on within the organization. And what we found was that there's 19 items on page 14, 19 high-level items. And what we looked at in this issues, in looking at the 19, was that almost all of them got dealt with the same approach. We dealt with people, process, technology, and metrics. And that's actually carried us through dealing with many of the items there. And you'll see as we go through this presentation, we've actually hit on all of them. Many of them we feel really good about as being, I will never say completed because you can always improve an organization, but we feel good about where we stand on there, and others we're continuing to evolve on. There's a couple items that came out of Funston that we shifted on, because organizations aren't static, and you really had to think about things as the organization changed. So you'll see, I'll talk about this from the perspective of metrics as well. And it's always interesting for me, and many of you, when we work with your own teams, know that we work from the perspective of metrics. We do two major metric pieces within BAM. One is the one that we use with our State Street organization. That one's coming up to about 90 pages worth of metrics, which we review every single month to keep our eye on the ball and make sure that our operations quality continues to improve. The second one is what we call our KPI, that is for BAM itself, and we measure all sorts of things, including things like how often we meet with our managers, whether or not we've completed the BAM calendar that we have to do for compliance purposes. All these from a full range of activities. We look at that metric tool, and we use that to actually how we manage the organization. So let's talk a little bit about where that page 19, that page 14. It's a little scary, this page. Let's see. Here we go. I'm not asking anybody to be able to read this because it's a tough one, but it is in your book. So let me hit on a couple of areas, first of all, where we feel really, really good about some of the things that we've done. Let's talk about some of the investment control issues we had within the organization. You might recall that one of the things we talked about was key person risk. Key person sitting around this table who shall remain nameless, but in a very, very key part of the heart of the Bureau of Asset Management. We resolved the issue of key person risk by bringing in some additional staff to support David and the team and to actually spread that staff around the organization and bolster the organization. We also reorganized the way we operate. So we do a very functional type of an organization, which we hadn't been doing before. So that's very much around process. I talked about the metrics. Hundreds of metrics that we use to measure the organization and keep it current and stay on top of that. And we've added technology to the mix. What has that allowed us to do? Well, it's allowed us to move our people away from things that were sort of rote tasks and really put our people towards more value-added activities. Another area where we feel pretty comfortable about what we've done is the concept of managing the portfolio of cash. You might remember from Funston and from other things that there was a question about how quickly we were applying cash and whether we had idle cash on the portfolio. We attacked that from a number of different perspectives. We actually sweep cash out of the fund accounts on a regular basis every month, a couple of times a month whenever we see balances building up. We sweep it right to the short-term desk, gets a better return than we do from a State Street account. We then track what's on the short-term desk. We work with the transition and rebalancing committees when we're funding new investments. That's where we go first. We don't have to sell other investments because we know exactly what we have on our short-term desk. We work with your own teams to be sure that we understand when cash is coming in and when cash is needed to fund pension payrolls. So these types of things really allow us to stay on top of our activity, and we've significantly reduced cash drag on the portfolio by about 50 or 60%. Huge improvement in that, turning money into better investments on an ongoing basis. I'm not going to go through as many of these as I could, all 19 of them, because we have hit on every single one of them, but I think it's important to note that every single one of this has been addressed in some way or shape to make us more comfortable about the way we manage the organization. So we really have used this as a touchstone, and now we're continuing to move on. So let's talk about some things that are ongoing process in this area. And a very important thing that we've been doing is we've been working very hard with the investment strategy team, as well as State Street, sort of our back office end of the world, on a front, middle, back office structure. And what we've worked with on the investment team is we're trying to pull stuff out of the front office so that the investment staff can spend more time working on investments, and we can support them on operational activities. That's been done already for real estate and for private equity, and we're rolling it out. In infrastructure, we're rolling it out more broadly across the organization. We've implemented an oversight model. We don't shadow book as much as we used to in the old days. We actually oversee and we do a check on our consultants and on our custodian. And that's been very helpful. We actually do a lot of work around consultants. As you know, in some of our asset classes, we have multiple consultants. The ability to be able to look at these activities across the consultants gives us an idea when there's problems in any of the activity, in any of the bookings that we have. Why does this matter? Because State Street is our actual accounting book and records, and we want to make sure that everybody looks at our activity in the same exact way. So that's incredibly important for us to be able to have that process in place. It's written that we were going to look at an alternative asset system. We needed to work better with our consultants and with our administrator State Street, and that we weren't sure we were going to get a whole lot. So instead of going down the path that was originally proposed of just buying a new piece of technology, we worked very hard to get our books and records completely in sync across the street. And now many of our asset teams actually rely, in fact all of our asset teams rely on that because it is our books and records of the, in fact all of our asset teams rely on that because it is our books and records of our portfolio. A reporting mechanism, a client reporting tool, and we're doing that right now. We're in the process of implementing Microsoft Dynamics, which is a project we're doing with BIST. It's a tool that's being used across the city and to working on implementing that, and hopefully we'll see that happen in 2020. FX hedging was another area in 2020. FX hedging was another area. We've done a good job around working with our foreign exchange provider. We are able to support a hedging strategy, totally dependent upon, but if it does, we're there to be able to support it. State Street, I mentioned here on ongoing. Challenges. We've worked very hard with the data platform, very, very helpful for us. It's been a bit of a challenge. They are a large organization, and they certainly have difficulty in supporting clients like. So those are some of the high points and some of the challenges that we continue to have. So let's talk a little bit about what we accomplished in 2019. One of the very interesting tools we built internally, and it was actually built, a person within BAM has been working with the BIST team, and we built a bespoke facility, looking at commitments we have with Madam WBE, all strategies, the strategy, commitments we have with Madam WBE, all strategies, the strategies, the portfolio of accounts together. You match it, all strategies, the strategies, the portfolio of accounts together. You match it with the commitments we have with Madam WBE, all strategies, the strategies, the portfolio of accounts together. You match all strategies, the strategies, the portfolio of accounts together. You match it with the data objectives capability accounts we have in these. We have an automated way of looks together. You match it with the data objectives capability accounts we have in these. We have a data objectives capability accounts we have in these. We have an automated way of looking at the portfolio. But your folks, because when we work with your teams, they know exactly that have an automated way of looking at the portfolio. But your folks, way of looking at the portfolio. But your folks, because when we work with your teams, they know exactly that have been languishing with zombie account through the work that came. Languishing with zombie account through the exactness that have been languishing with zombie account through the work. Languishing with zombie account through the work that came out of building out this account master, and it gives us a front out of building out this account master, and it gives us a front. And we implemented Data GX over the year. We're able to really tease out some of the data GX over the year. We're able to really tease out some of the data inconsistencies and get those resolved. In 2020, the middle offices and get those resolved. In 2020, the middle office is rolling along, and we've done a tremendous. The middle office is rolling along, and we've done a tremendous amount of work with the retirement, who's actually out ill today, but Lynn times a year and works with them to actually run learning sessions so that everybody learning sessions so that everybody really understands and representing the accounting of that portfolio. The accounting of that portfolio. We're going to continue to build out on the technology, the CRM, all of those tools actually will be interfacing with one another. All of those tools actually will be interfacing with one another on an ongoing basis. And we're putting together the architecture right now to make sure that we do the copy of the portfolio, which operational improvements, continuing to roll out the portfolio, operational improvements, continuing to roll out the middle office function, leveraging the improvements, continuing to roll out the middle office function, leveraging the technology added functions. And one of the really interesting things that we're actually looking to do in 2020 is we're on the hunt for buying an optical scanning and reconciliation tool. That will allow us to bring in all of the information we have, anything you can possibly reconcile, do that on an optical scanned automated way, kick out any kind of anomalies, and it'll take people away from doing some of the more rote tasks. So we're pretty excited about that because it'll give us the ability to do much to work on in 2020, and we're going to come back to most of you to talk about if you're interested in this activity. In this activity is reporting. If we look at the reporting that we put on the public website, we put pages and pages. In fact, public website, we put pages and pages. In fact, it can be hundreds and hundreds up to thousands of pages between. There's got to be a better way to streamline that and give the information in a way that you actually get it what really is the information in a way that you actually get it what really is important that you get in your board books. But in the public websites, they get very, very few hits at the public websites. They get very, very few hits at the information because the information is voluminous and difficult to suss out what really matters. So we'd love to continue to work on improving our ability to turn around contracts and get them from investment decision to investment made. Contracts and get them from investment decision to investment made, and that we're working on with our contracts team and others within the controls organization and more broadly. And we continue to hopefully have ongoing dialogue because your teams have actually been fantastic in working with BAM on ways of looking at the portfolio. They're right there with us. So that's a summary of where they're right there with us. So that's a summary of where we are going forward. Happy to take any questions.
Kara. Yeah, Dave. Dave.
The last bullet item was State Street.
Yeah.
If there are challenges with their deliverables and that we're too complex, with their deliverables and that we're too complex for them to be able to do whatever it is we feel we need them to do, what options do we have going forward?
I think anybody would have challenges. One is the decommingling that we've done on the fund. And we're in the process of finishing that up, and that's one of the objectives for. And we're in the process of finishing that up, and that's one of the objectives for 2020. We won't be able to decommingle all the accounts that we. A little bit of the complexity out of the we do a lot with State Street. We demand a lot of them. We person on their client council. We basically are a major participant council. We basically are a major participant in the client council about challenges that they have. They have recently assigned us a technology support person. I sent an email to them this morning on some of the topics that we've been feeling. And I think that they as an organ are going to be addressing them. They have a great support team. We have no addressing them. They have a great support team. We have no trouble with our support team, but it's development work. Like at any large bank, it's hard to turn the ship around. How are we going to address it going forward? Well, every 9 years we go through an audit on whether or not anybody will be better, or if State Street, or maybe they're the best that's out in the market. So we will absolutely. We're going to come out with that. I think in 2021. I think we're going to issue it. But an RFP for a custodian is a heavy lift. And and there's a lot of stuff about State Street that we really like. But they're challenging in getting some of the stuff through that there's a couple of things that they have done this year that have been very helpful. Platform was a bit of a challenge, but when we're there, they're going to use that as a platform for building at the head of the curve and considering the complexity of our portfolio, better that they fit into a less complicated environment. We also went live helping us to really understand fees across between ILPA and the Fee Transparency Service, and we now have actually very good information. Around that as well. So there are things, and we now have actually very good information around that as well. So there are things that they're doing that are very helpful. They're supposed to go live in April for us. Things like that will be helpful as well.
That's great. And my second question is... That's great. And my second question is there an expectation that Funston will come back at some point to do a checkup to see how we're doing, or was there...
That's up to, that we would be happy to have him in if that was, we would be happy to have him in if that was a choice to be made. But I think feel with where we stand, deck of recommendations. I would say there's never a lack of things that you can actually improve. It's a useful roadmap, but I think that will be determined by the controller or others, right?
Questions for Cara? Want answers to them here because I think it would take too long, but I just want to go through and understand. So the CRM, relationship management,
Right.
who are the clients?
It's the investment managers in the G pipeline and understand who we're doing outreach with. We'll also end up have an existing relationship with, so that's the major bulk. Okay, but we will also use it for, I would put State Street out there as a relationship that I have, and I can still take a look and see at that and see my notes of my that I have, and I can still take a look and see at that and see my notes of my meetings with I have with them is a very critical vendor to us, the same as we can do on any other investment manager or GP.
I don't know who Lynn Fleischman is.
You should. I will make
that's why
sure
I
next
asked.
is the investment.
Lynn Fleischman is.
You should. I will make
that's why I
sure next
asked.
is the investment operations support team. She works for David, and she is a fund execution support team. She works for David, and she is a fund exec and has really brought an enormous amount of change to both the investment operations support team and also in Work Connect. And I'm sorry you haven't met her. We'll make that work.
I might have. I might have. I don't remember everyone I've met. Full confession. You mentioned a golden. You mentioned a golden copy of the.
The absolute right answer. So if somebody actually wants to turn around and say this answer. So if somebody actually wants to turn around and say this is the invest 2012. Okay, you want to go back and look, and there's probably 3 different places within the organization that say, I did that. There's probably 3 different places within the organization that say, I did that in 2011. This one says I did it in. So this is the place where you can 2011. This one says I did it in. So this is the place where you can actually get a consistent piece of information. What is the strategies are, et cetera. This is where this tremendous value for us, John. Prior to having MWBE managers manage us, John. Prior to having MWBE managers manage in a couple of places within State Street, managers manage in a couple of places within State Street, manage it because they did some of the reporting for us. They weren't. They did some of the reporting for us. They weren't the same. Okay, and our manager and our account investment name. Okay, and our manager and our account investment strategy for golden copy. We know exactly what our list is. In that way, we know exactly what our list is. In that way, we can actually have a discussion and make sure it stays consistent, getting accurate information. Stays consistent, getting accurate information.
Okay, thank you. Certain funds that are commingled,
right?
But I actually don't know which ones are commingling.
Okay.
So I wonder if we don't know which ones are commingling.
Okay.
So I wonder if we, as trustees, could get a report, and then which ones are a report, and then which ones are. That's a term I have not heard. Which ones are. That's a term I have not heard before.
Right. Absolutely. We looked to date what's we've looked. Absolutely. We looked to date what's we've looked at it from the top line what's commingled, and we've looked at it from the top line what's commingled, and we looked at then there's a residual. That's very easy. Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
great.
No problem.
Okay.
Very easy. Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
great.
No problem.
Okay, I'll
got
stop
that.
there. Anybody else have any questions?
Got that.
There. Anybody else have any questions? Great. Okay. Thanks, Cara. Let's just do a check-in from trustees. New
York City PBA.
Anybody else over here? Okay. Aldrin?
Aljo Rafael Bonilla, designee for.
Over here? Okay. Aldrin?
Aljo Rafael Bonilla, designee for.
Else?
Susanna Vickers,
Oh.
teachers.
Right next to her.
Vickers,
Oh.
teachers.
Right next to her. Got that? Okay. Folks, just, got that? Okay. Folks, just can make sure he gets your, Mr. Donier,
I was just going to add, John, since you
gets your, Mr. Donier.
I was just going to add, John, since you asked the question about Lynn, to be clear, I didn't mention this in the intro. Was that she is our. It was a role that was put in place, during Scott Evans' tenure to really look at our side. So it's a very senior role within the organization.
Thank you. Public agenda, is that right? Thank you. Public agenda, is that right, Alex? We will now entertain motions to boards. So let's start with entertain motions to boards. So let's start with nice. Thank you, Mr. Katzman. Is there a discussion? Thank you, Mr. Katzman. Is there a discussion? All in favor? Thank you, Mr. Katzman. Is there a discussion? All in favor of the motion to exit public session and enter exit public session and enter exec. All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Enter executive session. Motion carries. Enter executive session. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there a second? All in favor of the motion at teachers? Is there a second? All in favor of the motion at teachers to exit public session and enter executive session, please say aye. Motion carries. Public session and enter executive session, please say aye. Motion carries. At police, is there a motion to exit?
Public session.
At police, is there a motion to exit?
Public session and go into executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Alejandro. Second, Mr. Dorset, thank you. For the motion at police to... Second, Mr. Dorset, thank you. For the motion at police to exit. All opposed, please say nay. Any exit?
Motion.
Thank you. Please say nay. Any exit?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Exit public session, enter executive. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Exit public session, enter executive. I couldn't hear it. Who's any discussion? Enter executive. I couldn't hear it. Who's any discussion? Exit executive session, enter public session. Excuse me. Exit public session, enter exit executive session, enter public session. Excuse me. Exit public session, enter public session. Excuse me. Exit public session, enter executive session. Please say aye. Nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Abstentions? Motion carries. So we've now exited public session. We're in executive session. Please turn the cameras off. And let me ask any members of the public or any...
Okay, we're back in public, right? Turn it over to Phil.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to request a amendment to the November 14, 2012 resolution to add Nick Safuni and to represent the DEA regarding any pension issues, pension disability.
Or any successor to Nick.
Or any successor.
So in the transcript from the November 14th, 2012 session on page 9, there was a 2-paragraph resolution adopted by the board. And I will read it as it is amended. It is the long-standing position of this board that trustees and their designees may have counsel present during executive session of board meetings, and that counsel for individual members may communicate with the board in writing only. Consistent with that policy, the DEA, CEA, LBA, and SBA have retained counsel to assist in their capacity as trustees, and going forward, such counsel will be allowed to attend executive sessions. Such counsel may remain present throughout executive session with the understanding that such counsel and their firm shall not undertake representation of any members of the PBA relating to pension matters. Is there any opposition to this?
Phil, I just want to make sure that it's clear, the part that was added in, which section, what was the first word in the part you added in to the resolution?
Such.
Was it such?
Such.
Yes, such, so from the point of such and after that, that's all new language.
That's all new, and we are eliminating the second paragraph that used to be in the old resolution that started with however and ended with SBA cases. So is there any opposition to this?
No, so I would like to make a motion to accept the resolution that's been provided.
Second by the PBA.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now?
Do we need to put this in the minutes next week?
No, it's already in what would to have a copy of the resolution as read shall be maintained by the executive director so that it can be called out without having to go through the minutes, so that the board can always refer to it if there's a question or any future modification.
All right.
So Nicole, at this time, I believe you have a report out.
Yes, during executive session, the trustees heard presentations on fixed income, private equity, real estate, hedge funds, and a securities litigation update. Action was taken, details to be made public at the appropriate time.
So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Thank you, everyone, and I guess we'll see everybody at the disability meeting now.
Okay, we're back in public session. Melanie, would you please report out of executive session?
The board hired a private equity investment partner, co-investment partner, the details of which will be disclosed at a later date. The board hired a private equity consultant. The board agreed to commit funds to a private equity investment and a real estate investment, the details of which will be disclosed at a later date. And the board agreed to a contract with a data source, the details of which will be disclosed at a later date.
Great. Thank you. And now that concludes our business for today. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Recommendations made by their attorneys. I'd like to have a motion to close the meeting for January 29th.
So moved. Second. Thank you, Bert.
Recommendations made by their attorneys. I'd like to have a motion to close the meeting for January 29th.
So moved. Second. Thank you, Bert.
Okay.
In executive session, we received a presentation from the UNPRI. We received presentations from 2 private equity firms. Consensus was reached on both funds. We received presentations from 2 private equity consultants. We chose, consensus was reached on which one to hire. We received a presentation on a real estate investment. Consensus was reached. And no consensus was reached on a real estate recommendation for a prior SIP.
Do we have any other business before the board today? Seeing none, I believe a motion to adjourn is in order. Motion by Ms. Penny, seconded by?
Second.
Mr. Brown, you just beat the punch slightly. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.